Going into the 9th and final round of Norway Chess 2017, Levon Aronian led the field by half a point. He played Wesley So in the last round with the black pieces. It was a solid Queen's Gambit. Wesley was pressing a little bit, but Levon was up to the task, and well, this is the position after 37 moves, and Levon simplified into a drawn rook and pawn endgame. There wasn't too much going on there, and well, after another 20 or so moves, they agreed to draw. They got down to king versus king. So that meant Levon had 6 out of 9. If Hikaru Nakamura could defeat Fabiano Caruana, then he would tie first with Aronian. So let's have a quick look at that game. So Caruana with the white pieces, and it's an open Sicilian, and both players really up for a full-blooded fight. Naidorf from Nakamura and Bishop G5 from Caruana. In the past, Caruana has played, for example, Bishop E3. He specialised in that for a long time. But Bishop G5 really shows his intent on this day. Previously, Knight D7 has been a favourite of Nakamura as well. He's played a lot of different systems. But today, I mean, clearly going for a win, he went for the poisoned pawn variation. So this is a really daring idea. Of course, a great favourite of Bobby Fischer. He was really the first to popularise this variation, and after him, Kasparov took it on as his main line as well. So a very principled move. Big idea is to try and exploit the early development of that bishop and to attack the pawn on b2. Of course, if white could make 2 moves, queen d2 and castles, he'd be fine. But it's slightly awkward for white to defend that pawn. That's the whole rationale behind the move. So queen d2 is, of course, the most popular move here, but Caruana played quite a trendy variation, queen d3. So this is a little bit different. So giving up the pawn, and it looks a bit weird to block this bishop, but actually white can use the queen on the 3rd rank very well. So first of all, Caruana plays f5 to try and open up the position as quickly as possible. Well, if e5, that will just leave a horrible weakness on d5, so one can't really contemplate that. So bishop e7 development looks sensible, and bishop e2, and well, although the bishop isn't on d3, this bishop can sometimes be very useful on this diagonal looking at black's king. So now the queen comes back, hitting the bishop, so gaining a bit of time, and also, you know, looking at that diagonal. So this is a bit funny. The bishop comes all the way back, but it means that white gains a move. The queen has to move again, so the queen comes back to c7. So after that little transaction, the queen has come back to safety. White's development is pretty good. You can see rook on the semi-open file. But black's position is pretty solid, so really white needs to do something quite quickly here in order to well, create some confusion really before black manages to develop his queenside pieces. You know, if black is given a few moves, bishop d7, knight c6, castles kingside, well, black will be absolutely fine. So it's really important that white in this position seizes the game by the scruff of the neck and goes for it. Hence g4. So this is a disturbing move. So if black continues with development, then g5, for example, pushing the knight back, and then bishop g4, just attacking that weak point on e6. And if the light squares go, then black's position usually crumbles. Therefore h6. Now, this is actually a pretty well-known position. It's been seen a lot in professional chess. And here, the most popular move is queen h3, which leads to incredible complications after, for example, castles and g5. It's meant to be okay for black, actually, but you know, you need to have done your research very well. But Caruana played a new move here after precisely 27 seconds, so of course it was all prepared. Rook g1, just with the idea of putting the rook behind the pawn to make it turbocharged. And in fact, if castles, well, could play g5, but actually h4 seems to be more dangerous. And yeah, once the position opens like that and white switches the h-file, then it could be fatal. So in this position, Nakamura, clearly not familiar with the position, played bishop d7. Probably a good move, preparing to develop the knight c6. So g5 from Caruana. This was exchanged. So a bit of pressure here on g7. Now, rook h7 is probably the most practical move. And it's just a very unclear position, particularly as white's king. I mean, you can talk about black's king being insecure, but look at white's king here. You know, it's because the rooks are moved, it can no longer castle. Of course, it's pretty safe in the middle behind all these pieces. But, you know, this is a really double-edged struggle. Instead of that, Hikaru played a really risky move, knight c6, allowing white to take on g7 and then castling queenside. Well, by this stage, the king has to evacuate. Now, why is this so risky? Well, okay, first of all, we should consider this move, queen takes a6. Well, if, whoops, beg your pardon, queen takes a6. If that's taken, that would be very nice for white. But unfortunately, knight takes d4 is just winning for black. So, instead of that, Caruana played knight b5. And this is unbelievably risky for black. Hitting the queen, if the queen retreats, then rook takes bishop, and then you take here, and that's game over. So in this position, well, Hikaru had clearly seen this. He had prepared knight e5. Then knight takes c7, knight takes d3 check, so that gets taken. Now, if here rook takes, then bishop a5 check looks pretty good. There's also rook takes here as well. Must be good for white. Here Nakamura thought for well, another over 20 minutes actually, and he didn't find the right move. Caruana, incredibly, had all this on his analysis board, all computer assisted at home, and unbelievably, this move, rook takes pawn, is the best move. Giving up a piece, well, okay, first of all, rook c1, check. Okay, the bishop steps in the way. Now black's king has to step out of the way, so king here. Then rook takes bishop. White is a whole piece up here, but incredibly, he doesn't have more than a draw. It's very difficult for white to get out of his problems here. So let me show you one absolutely mad variation. So here, and now knight g4. So threat to take this bishop. And white can even lose if he's too keen and plays king e2. Here's a lovely trick. Knight e3, bishop takes knight, rook takes bishop, checkmate. So white can escape like this, but, well, this should lead to a draw after this move. Unbelievable variation. As I said, Caruana had analysed this before the game. But instead, Nakamura convinced himself he was worse. I mean, I think that variation is impossible to see over the board. And now Caruana played very nicely, knight a8, excellent move. Computers say that bishop a5 is a better move, but this is very, very safe and easy to play for white. Basically, he's a pawn up. That pawn can't be taken because there's a piece hanging here. So bishop c6, and now white is just a very safe pawn up. And the way that Caruana played after this was, well, really, I think, beyond reproach. Nakamura just can't defend this position, and this is a really nice rook switch. He came to the b file, and, well, here there's no decent defense against white's attack here, and, well, Caruana won a second pawn, and it was really, really easy. So an incredible bit of preparation from Caruana, but just shows you, if you're on the wrong side of preparation, how difficult it is to recover. And Nakamura just got hit with a big opening punch there. The most remarkable game of the day was Kramnik against Giri. Let me just show you this one very, very quickly. So Kramnik, as is so often these days, plays very pragmatically. Plays the collar Zuckertort, and here, well, one can play either c3 or b3. These are the most accurate moves. Kramnik just castled, and of course one could still play knight c6 here as normal, but instead Giri played very principally and pushed that bishop away and then gained space, and this is absolutely not bad for black. A very principled way of playing, because black can hold this pawn on c4. But looking at the positive side for white, on the positive side for white, he has castled very, very early, and if white can actually open up the position, as Kramnik succeeded in doing, then things can be very interesting. Giri said afterwards he thought this was a really dubious idea and he wanted to punish Kramnik, and he did that by playing b4 and then put the pawn on c3, which means this bishop is dead for the moment. But Kramnik wasn't unduly worried. You know, these days he's a very dynamic player. He's very laid back. After the game, both players thought that black should probably play knight c6 here. Instead, Giri went bishop d6, which looks okay. So a3, well, of course, if white manages to undermine the c3 pawn, then he's doing pretty well. So a5. But now bishop b5 check, and suddenly things are a bit dubious. That's why Giri should have played knight c6 to avoid this. Now king e7 is probably the best move, but king f8 played by Giri, and now knight c5. This is tricky, suddenly very, very tricky for black. And that is actually a very nice piece to take to exchange off that bishop, because actually it means it's going to be well, it's not so easy for black to develop that knight with this wonderful bishop here, and it's going to be simpler for white to try and break open the position. Here black should play maybe h6 or king e7, and still a very nice position for white, but after g6, this, I think we can say quite clearly, is a losing move. It's very interesting how once Giri came into a kind of non-standard position, he completely lost his sense of danger, his sense of balance just went completely. After g6, of course, Kramnik just gives up this pawn, and this bishop might have been trapped a couple of moves ago, but now it cruises into the game onto this fantastic square h6, and this is just terrible. Let me show you one nice variation. The king goes to g8, knight g4 threatens queen takes knight and knight f6 mate. If bishop e7 to cover that, then we can take on b4, take the rook on a8, f3 will push the knight back and play queen e7 threatening a mate, And if knight f5, queen f6 is a beautiful winning move, threatening the deadly queen takes bishop and knight f6 mate, among other moves. Also threatening bishop e8 as well. Beautiful stuff. After bishop h6 check, the king came to e7. This loses not in quite such a spectacular way. After f3, Giri put the knight on d2. Oh, it's a very curious position, but Kramnik can simply play around the knight. Threatening knight f7 and queen e6. No decent defence. The king came back, and this is horrible. And after bishop f4, after just 20 moves, Anish Giri resigned the game. Was this premature? Actually not. There is no decent move for black. Well, first of all, simple move, knight f7 and bishop d6 is one particular threat. Well, let's have a look at possible defences. What about bishop f8? Could take here. Pawn takes allows a trade on a8 and knight f7, so bishop takes. Simple move, knight d3. And if queen takes bishop, queen e5. And this is an absolutely deadly attack. So let's just show you a few more moves. This, check. Here, queen f. Okay, game over. It's incredible. Everything is running white's way in this position. So that leaves the final standings. Levon Aronian, the deserved winner, on 6 out of 9. Nakamura and Kramnik on 5 out of 9. Caruana, and Giri on 4.5. Vachier-Lagrave on 4. And then incredibly, the last 3 contenders in the World Championship final, Carlsen, Anand and Karyakin in the bottom 3 places. Carlsen and Anand on 4, Karyakin on 3.5. Afterwards, Carlsen said, you know, what was wrong, what went wrong for him. He said, a combination of lack of confidence and excellent play by my opponents. Now, I find that very interesting when he said a lack of confidence. He said that in classical chess, he's not convinced about his ability to win games. Sounds like he needs a real rethink on his strategy in classical games. Thanks for watching. Remember, if you want to subscribe to the PowerPlayChess YouTube channel, then do hit the subscribe button. There'll be more videos coming your way soon. Thanks for watching.